Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about a new show premiering on CBS called The Activist and the backlash that this show has been receiving online. Now, first, a bit of housekeeping. If you like my videos or are new to this channel, then I encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a lot. Now, let's begin. All right. The hosts of this show are meant to be Usher, Priyanka Chopra, and Julianne Hough. And the premiere date of this episode is supposed to be October 22nd, 2021. And the premise of the show goes like this: activists go head to head in challenges to promote their causes, with their success measured via online engagement, social metrics, and hostess input. The three teams have one ultimate goal: to create impactful movements that amplify their message, drive action, and advance them to the G20 summit in Rome, Italy. There, they will meet with world leaders in the hope of securing funding and awareness for their causes. The team that receives the largest commitment is celebrated as the overall winner at the finale, which will also feature musical performances by some of the world's most passionate artists. Now, in terms of the backlash, below are what some of the critics have had to say about this show. It's performative at best and kind of makes light of the hard work a lot of the grassroots organizations do on the ground on a daily basis. Gross, wrote Stephanie Yalbo, a writer and activist. It's not just the activists' premiere that's hollow, but the solutions the show offers as well. The show measures success through online engagement, social metrics, and hostess inputs. And ultimately, the groups will head to Rome to attend the G20 summit, where they will meet with world leaders to secure funding for their causes. At its heart, the activist buys into a liberal dream that simply raising awareness can enact radical change, a much easier task than improving laws or boycotting destructive companies. And when awareness itself doesn't work, perhaps approaching Justin Trudeau as a venture capitalist for justice may do the trick. This was also another commentary of the show. Every part of this reality show sounds like, I don't even know, satire. The reality TV singularity. What does it mean that success will be measured via social metrics? Will we see Usher tallying trending Twitter hashtags? Is Julianne Hough going to the G20 summit? Who are these passionate artists that will perform at the show's finale? And why do I sense that one of them will be Nick Jonas? Another critique of the show is written by Adam Jamodo, director of impact at Tufts University's Institute for Democracy in Higher Education, which conducts nonpartisan research on college, civic education, and participation. He said that the initial backlash is unsurprising. The marketing of this show amplifies the more cynical aspects of activism that some may see as performative. It emphasized the celebrity factor. It emphasized that it's a competition, and it made activism appear in some ways to be a zero sum game. In reality, activism is hard, gritty work and not necessarily glamorous. It requires tenacity, perseverance, and patience, and it's not easy to put into a box. It crosses over with people of different communities, and it requires interdependent work among people. And the way they set up this show does not really square with that. And these are what some of are seen as progressive members of Congress, Jamal Bowman and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have had to say about this. Here's Mr. Bowman. I'm going to activate the block button to see if any of y'all watching this to see if any of y'all watching this mess. And for Mrs. Cortez, she chimes in and says, "I'm going to submit one in your name." Now, after all of this backlash and all of this critiques, this is what this is a statement written by a global citizen. After the format for the activist drew some blowback on social media, Deadline reached out to Global Citizen for a statement, and they say this: the activist spotlights individuals who've made it their life's work to change the world for the better, as well as the incredible and often challenging work they do on the ground in their communities. This is not a reality show to trivialize activism. On the contrary, our aim is to support activists everywhere, show the ingenuity and dedication they put into their work, and amplify their causes to an even wider audience. So as of now, it looks like this show is still on track to have its premiere date on October 22nd. All right. So as far as my opinion, I think I'm very much in agreement with the critics about why this show, The Activist, is a bad idea. And one of the aspects I think about is what has happened to Pride Month and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Now, this is an article from Vox.com, and it talks about how LGBTQ Pride Month became a branded holiday and why that's a problem. Now, in the article, it reads: to grasp the dilemma of the commercialization of Pride's events, it's worth examining a very similar case: the pinkwashing of breast cancer awareness. The phenomenon of any kind of pink object coming to represent awareness of breast cancer created a context where purchasing pink anything and everything allowed people to feel like they were contributing somehow to a cure for the disease. But the problem with breast cancer awareness, as Jezebel and many others have pointed out, is that with all the commercialized support, was ultimately pretty empty. In 2015, the New York Times explained that for all the awareness, breast cancer incidents have been nearly flat, and there is still no cure for women whose cancer has spread beyond the breast to other organs like the liver or bones. What do we have to show for the billions spent on pink ribbon products? Asked Kumar Jagger, the executive director of Breast Cancer Action, an activist group, told the Times. A lot of us are done with awareness. We want action. This is the problem with commodifying awareness. While it may serve to raise money for a charitable cause, there's no guarantee that the money will result in any sort of tangible outcome. It's normal activism divorced from real action. And in the same article, they also talked about what happens when raising awareness comes in contrast with the bottom line of a company. And the passage reads as this: perhaps the most pertinent example is Gillette sponsoring New York City Pride. Gillette is the pharmaceutical company that makes the pill Truvita for PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis, a medication regimen that, when taken daily, can reduce the risk of HIV from sex by over 90%. Without insurance, PrEP costs $2,110.99 per month. With insurance and a coupon from Gillette, that goes down to zero. The problem is that communities where PrEP can have the greatest effect aren't getting the drug because the people in those communities often cannot afford the insurance that covers it. It goes on to say, while the HIV epidemic has not had a broad impact on the general U.S. population, It has greatly affected the economically disadvantaged in many urban areas, the CDC wrote in a study of poverty-stricken urban areas. Further, gay and bisexual black men have a higher HIV rate in the U.S. than any country in the world. But they're not the people using PrEP. According to Paz magazine, an estimated 136,000 Americans were using PrEP as of the first quarter of 2017, but a large majority of those users are white men who are 25 and older. Gillette Science estimated that in 2015, about 75% of men who filled out a PrEP prescription were white, while black men only comprised 9% of those prescriptions. Generic versions could change that, but Gillette won't release its patent. Furthermore, as activists have pointed out, research and funding went into Gillette were provided by taxpayer money, not money raised for awareness. And again, this is a tweet posted by Jason Rosenberg. And again, he essentially said that imagine a pill that has the ability to reduce HIV transmission by 99%. And what if you were told that all the funding that went into researching this prevented drug was actually by taxpayer money? So it's one of those examples that, kind of shows that for all this talk about raising awareness and essentially getting the money to raise awareness, that ultimately in this specific example, that raising money for awareness meant nothing because that money did not actually go into actually finding a way to create this drug that could actually have an impact on those individuals in the LGBT community. And for me, this is a worry that I have about Juneteenth, as now that it has been established as a national federal holiday. One of my worries is that ultimately, is that despite all of the money that can potentially be raised, that ultimately we're not going to see tangible impacts in terms of like reducing, reducing sort of like the wealth gap, or essentially improving education levels. That ultimately things will more or less kind of stay the same, and all that money will just essentially be used to essentially be invested into essentially kind of like a marketing or PR campaign. And I think ultimately, and that's why ultimately sort of like raising awareness, while it's good, ultimately again, like there has to be tangible, movable metrics that are being shown, and Twitter hashtags or online engagement, that's not enough. And I think the last point that I want to say is that ultimately, and I think this was said before, but activism is not, activism is not fun in terms of sort of like, it doesn't fit neatly into a box. Activism is not a popularity contest. And I think that, the person that I think, shows the biggest example of that is Martin Luther King Jr. That I think that, again, we talk about a man who is celebrated almost universally today, but you consider that at the time of his death, Martin Luther King Jr. was widely disliked by the American public. This is a stat from Smithsonian Magazine, and it says that according to an early 1968 Harris poll, the man whose half century of martyrdom we celebrate, in 2021, died with a public disapproval rating of nearly 75%, a figure shocking in its own day, and still striking today in today's highly polarized political climate. So it's to say that again, like if you try to turn activism into sort of like who has the most charisma or who is seen as the most likable, you're missing the point that activism is inherently meant to be, uncomfortable. That you are challenging in some cases social norms, and essentially sort of you also kind of like at the end of the day trying to change laws that may end up impacting people, that even if it's seen as for the good, some people generally may not like it. Again, activism is hard, gritty work. It's not fun sometimes. And I think that this idea that, you know, I understand that we live in a world that does have competition. We all understand that. You talk about essentially there are support for essentially climate change, women's rights, Black Lives Matter, you know, everything under the sun. But ultimately, trying to sort of like stuff it into this sort of like aspect where you can put this reality TV show spin on it and just somehow say, oh, well, let's just see which is the most popular. I think you are really doing a disservice to people and disservice to these organizations. Again, it's not about popularity. It's about trying to bring the most good to the people who most need it. And I think this show, in my opinion, just badly, badly misses the mark. So, that's it for today. We'll see. I mean, again, as of now, this show is still moving forward, and we'll see like what becomes of it. We'll see if they take in the criticism and decide to change some of the format, or just decide to cancel the show entirely. But we shall see. Now that we've reached the end of the video, I encourage all of you, if you liked my like today's video, that you would like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a lot to the health and growth of this channel. I thank you guys again, and I wish you a good day.